Hey guys, so this is my first ever podcast. I'm my first video too. So I'm still getting used to this. I'm not that good. I'm still learning. But I'm trying to create a podcast based on sports broadcasting and all the current news on ESPN, and I'll be going over a new topic every day. So today I want to talk about the upcoming fantasy football season. And fantasy football, I love it. It's great. I mean, it's fun. It might seem as gambling, but it's really fun, and you get as long as you do. I'm creating leagues on sites like ESPN and NFL.com, where there isn't really much gambling involved, or not really any gambling in the first place. It's just a fun game with the draft, and you get to win make believe trophies, and if you're really good at it, it's actually pretty fun. So I use NFL.com. It's pretty nice, and people already start drafting from June 15th. But I think now is the time to draft. You get your league started early, or you can even do it during the season. So I just want to go over who I think will be great players for fantasy football next season, and strategies during the draft to get good players. So for quarterback, some of the top quarterbacks who I think will perform great next season and put up a lot of touchdowns and uh, rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns, not many interceptions, not many turnovers. Include Cam Newton. He plays for the Panthers. I think he's a great quarterback coming off that great Super Bowl run of 15 in one season. Aaron Rodgers, of course, he has a lot of weapons. I think Eddie Lacy will be great for him next season. He's going to come back and take some load off. Tom Brady, even he might be good for a later round pick because he might have a 4 game suspension, so you might not want to take him at an early draft round. Ben Roethlisberger, I think he's really good. Mike Tomlin's obviously still there, and Russell Wilson, he's someone who can really hurt you on the ground, and he's like probably the most consistent quarterback in the league, and he puts up at least like 19 points for fantasy football every single game, so he's a great value pickup. And if they're out of these 5 quarterbacks, if I was to get someone reliable, uh, and who would put up numbers every week, I would take Russell Wilson. So at running back, there are a lot of choices actually. I think there are a lot of candidates who will do well, but some of these guys might not actually do well. It's almost chance. It's a lot of luck involved. Yeah, Andrew Luck. Well, yeah. By the way, Andrew Luck just signed a new deal, which is worth the most in the NFL. 6 years, 140 million. So yeah, this guy, I think Andrew Luck will be good next season too, because he just got his money. For running back, you have Devontae Freeman. Obviously, he had that historic 4 game stretch in fantasy football, where he put up like 25 or more points every week. David Johnson for the Cardinals, he was like he played really nicely towards the end of the season. The Cowboys drafted Ezekiel Elliott at fourth overall. Uh, that Cowboys offensive line is great, so I think he'll do pretty good running the football, and he's young too, so that's great. Todd Gurley from last year, same situation. He's just a powerhouse. I would love to pick him up. Le'Veon Bell, he's one of those guys that I'm not really sure about, but I think if he stays healthy, he'll do good. The question mark is, will he stay healthy? Because he hasn't been for the past 2 seasons, and it's cost some fantasy owners. Eddie Lacy, he's lost a lot of pounds, so he should be running up and running next season, and hopefully he stays disciplined. Adrian Peterson, obviously, even though he's uh, worn out a little bit, I think he's good. He's the main figure in that Vikings offense, and will get his touches every week. And Lamar Miller, moving from the Dolphins to the Texans, I think the Texans will want to run the football a lot, even though they got Brock Osweiler. So look for Lamar Miller to get a lot of short passes and rushing yards. At wide receiver, obviously Julio Jones. I think he's the number one wide receiver out there, mainly because he's really tall. And the Falcons wide receivers, there aren't really many people. They just got Mohamed Sanu, but I think Matt Ryan's still gonna want to go to Jones most of the time. And also for the Steelers, they have their go-to guy in Antonio Brown. And the Giants have Odell Beckham Jr. obviously. So those three guys, they're all going to go in the first round. You won't be able to get all three of them. Most of the guys I'm talking about, you're only probably going to get to like two of them at most because they're all really good players. And since they're 10 or 12 or even 14 players in the draft, you aren't going to get everyone that you want because they're going to pick up the good players too. So you want to strategize so you get some good running backs, some good wide receivers, so you have good offense, and you could have some breakout candidates too. Uh, so some other wide receivers I was talking about, Sammy Watkins for the Bills. He's really fast. He'll do good. Keenan Allen, he's coming back. I just hope he doesn't get injured. That's another question mark. And DeAndre Hopkins, he's been great. For tight end, it's a really small market. There are only like a couple of players who can really put up numbers. For example, Gronk is one of them. Obviously, he's the best tight end that you could get. And then you have Kobe Fleener, Ladarius Green. There really aren't any options. Jimmy Graham, if he actually plays well for once. Benjamin Graham. No, what's his name? I'm sorry. It's Benjamin something. Forgot. Benjamin Watson for the Saints. For defense, I would go with the regular. I wouldn't worry too much about defense and kickers. You could always change. You could always pick up new defenses and new kickers from week to week. That's a great option based on the matchups. But if you actually want to draft a defense, you could draft the Seahawks, obviously, the Vikings, Broncos, Cardinals, and teams like that. They're probably the best defense in the league. Rams too. So if you were to go with any defenses and drafting defenses, I would go with those 4 or 5. Kicker, same thing. I would do things based on the matchups. But if you want to pick up a kicker or draft a kicker, you could draft Stephen Hauschka for the Seahawks or Chandler Catanzaro for the Cardinals. I think those are the two best kickers out there. Or even Cody Parkey for the Eagles. He put up a good season 2 seasons ago when he was actually playing. Last season he was injured, so he didn't play. And some breakout candidates. So these are guys who are flying a little bit under the radar, I believe. And I think that you could get them in later rounds for good value, and they could put up good numbers for you. So for running back, Carlos Hyde. He got injured last year, but he's like on the verge of having a breakout season. This is just my feeling. Same with Latavius Murray. He's an up and down guy, but I think based on the matchup and based on just how he feels in the Raiders offense and how the offensive coordinator deals with him compared to using him as a threat compared to the wide receivers, he could be really good pickup. Same with Mark Ingram. And Thomas Rawls. So Thomas Rawls is the new guy for Seattle now that Marshawn Lynch has retired. Since the Seahawks have always been a running organization, so I think Wilson is definitely going to run the ball, and I think Rawls will put up good numbers. So I would draft him too. Wide receiver, Marvin Jones, Alshon Jeffrey, guys like that who go a little bit later on. Like Alshon Jeffrey will go pretty early. If you want a guy, maybe you might want to pick Mohamed Sanu because if Julio Jones ever gets injured, you could have him as a handcuff. This is what they call it. Same with Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill. One of them is you should draft both of them because then one of them can be used as a handcuff if the other one gets injured. And based on the matchup, the Bengals are going to decide which running back they're going to want to start because they're both really good, or they can both be really bad. So yeah, those are some breakout candidates. Also, I forgot I mentioned the quarterback, Matty Ice. So Matt Ryan plays for the Falcons. He had a terrible season. He normally doesn't throw that many interceptions, has that many fumbles, that many turnovers, but he did last season, and he put a lot of fantasy owners in pain. So I'm thinking that he's gonna come back this season. He's gonna play better. He's gonna help the Falcons out, and he's gonna have a good season. So some players who I think will do bad next season include Jamal Charles and LeSean McCoy at running back. So Jamal Charles is coming off an ACL tear, so he's just I think, and he's pretty old. So and the Chiefs have some young guns too. So if Charles, it's gonna be tough for him to come back basically, and I think he's gonna be like a DeMarco Murray type of guy now. I mean, same thing with DeMarco. I don't think he's gonna do good with the Titans. Titans are pretty bad. He's gonna do bad too. I just wouldn't touch him. And LeSean McCoy, even though he's pretty good, but he's pretty worn out too. Him, DeMarco Murray, Charles, they're all worn out guys. I mean, Peterson is a different situation. He's just a workhorse. But these three guys, they're workhorses too, but they're a little bit worn out. Their legs are dying. I think they won't produce as good as they normally do. So you might want to go with some other value options later on in the draft. Here, you might want to pick up just a different running back. And another thing I would just not touch at all is the Denver Broncos offense next season. So Peyton Manning just retired. They lost Brock Osweiler. They lost their offensive line is still pretty bad. It's not good at all. And you have a guy named Paxton Lynch who you drafted in the draft. Yeah, you drafted in the NFL draft. But he's still a work in progress. So he's not gonna. He might. And then you have Mark Sanchez. So it's not getting any better there. So Paxton Lynch will develop into a great quarterback, but next season he probably won't be that good. And Mark Sanchez is prone to throwing turnovers, so I wouldn't want him on my team either. And then their production is going. So yeah, Mark Sanchez. Sorry about that. Mark Sanchez is prone to throwing turnovers, and that's gonna directly affect the production of Demarius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, C.J. Anderson, Ronnie Hillman, the tight ends, Owen Daniels, who else? The Cody Latimer, all the offensive weapons that they have, the production of the quarterback and the offensive line, it's gonna affect all of them. So I wouldn't touch anyone there. So these are just some things I know another draft strategy is like for the first 3 rounds, go after running back, 2 running backs and a wide receiver, or 2 wide receivers and a running back. Or if you want to get Gronk, that's the only good option for tight end. I wouldn't touch any of the quarterbacks unless you want a quarterback that early. I think there's some good quarterbacks you can get later on, including like Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, those kind of guys. So or Russell Wilson if you want to take him in the 4th round. But there's some guys later on you could also take. Kirk Cousins, for example. Or even Matt Ryan isn't really getting drafted a lot, but if you could even pick him up after you draft. And then I would take a tight end later on, the 6th, 7th, or 8th round, a quarterback 6th, 7th, or 8th round, a backup quarterback later on, a couple more running backs, a couple more wide receivers, stuff like that, and then the 16 rounds will be over, and you'll probably have a good lineup. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and hopefully I won't be this bad in my next podcast. Thanks.